Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. This is the first week of April, and it's kind of crazy that things are continuing. It feels like a rapid pace every time we're here on a Monday, right? Bell Garcia, Charles Hamaker with you as always here. We I think last week we are like, oh, it's so nice to not have so much to talk about. And then, boom, we're back into it. So with that being said, your most complete coverage of Seattle sports, we'll get right into it with our Seattle news. News about the Seahawks here. Nothing, I guess, too groundbreaking, but some interesting tidbits here and there, especially about a certain wide receiver.
Yes, let's go ahead and dive right into those with some Seahawks news. Well, not really news, but just quick updates. The Seahawks are not fully closing the door on a Carlos Dunlap return. So they are looking at the possibility of having him back. And I think that release shocked everyone. So I'm not completely surprised that they're considering just picking him back up. Do you think this is for contract reasons or just to restructure things?
It might have been a contract thing. I know that he was playing out of position even last year, and that kind of hindered some of his stats. I know the game that comes to mind is the 49ers game at home where he had an impact. I think he had a safety in that game. I don't know. I think what probably sticks out is a contractual thing, but I don't understand why you cut him as opposed to, unless, again, like with the Bobby Wagner situation, you came to the table and said, which I don't think happened. I think they confirmed that they didn't ask him to take a pay cut.
Mm-hmm.
So bad. But I wonder if you come to the table and you ask Carl, he said, hey, are you going to take a pay cut? He said, no. All right. We have to do something. So I'm going to assume that they didn't do that. I was going to think, hey, it might have been a cap hit thing. But, going to a 3-4 defense, you're going to need, usually your down linemen are going to be bigger guys to stuff the run. Your outside guys are going to be linebackers that rush the passer. So are you putting Dunlap at an outside linebacker position there and then sometimes risk having to put him in coverage? You see what I mean? He's more, I feel like, fits into a 4-3 defense.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be a fit thing now. So it might be, hey, if you want to come back at a lower number, we can get you in some pass rush snaps.
Yeah.
But I think it's up to Dunlap at this point if he wants to do that and deeming where, the money. So I don't know if he would want to come into a fit like that right now.
Sure.
At this stage in his career, you know what I mean?
Are there reports that he's been in talks with any other teams? I didn't think so.
I haven't seen anything.
Okay.
I have not seen it.
We'll go ahead and move on to our next little tidbit here. The Seahawks and Kaepernick have talked, but while Kaepernick reached out to Seattle for a workout, Pete Carroll says that the conversations have not progressed between them, so still no accepted workout, and Kaepernick still tries to find his way back to the NFL.
I wonder about it because I think we talked about it a few weeks ago when Pete and John had that press conference. And he's like, I think you brought it up. He was like, hey, he might have a second chance. I don't know if it's in football, though.
Right.
And it's like, it doesn't really seem like there's any positive momentum towards it. And especially with what we've seen, what you just mentioned, Bell, I don't know. I don't see it. I know we've got some stuff about him later, so we'll get to that in league news. But
we will.
Is it in Seahawks blue and green? I kind of doubt it with how they've talked about him.
Yeah, I don't think Carroll is open to it so much. It definitely doesn't sound like it. So hopefully he finds his way. NFL.com identifies that the Seahawks draft needs 3 different positions: QB, offensive tackle, and corner. Corner is the one that sticks out to me the most.
Yeah,
because we
the
have
other
3
ones
in the position.
Makes sense. Yeah, but like you were saying, to sign, help me out here. It was Coleman, Burns, and Sidney. Yeah, so you signed those. Yep, good on you. So you've already got Trey Brown coming back, so there's 4 guys, right? Who, if you draft somebody, who's getting pushed out of there?
Right.
Who's losing minutes? Unless you're playing a bunch of quarter sets where you've got 5 cornerbacks on the field, which you won't be. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I don't think they'd be looking so much at the corner position. I know we've talked previously about the quarterback position and Malik Willis being possibly a good fit. So I think that's maybe where they would look. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that corner position needs to be looked at anymore or any more changes to be made.
Yeah, no, I would. I think it's fine now. I mean, we talked about it before we went on air about Kevin King still being in there and
Mhm.
having a guy that's got the size that he does. But it doesn't. I mean, yeah, it feels like we're getting a little crowded in the cornerback room because someone's going to have to sit on the bench here.
Right.
Especially if you draft somebody. If you draft somebody, they probably will be developed, right? But Trey Brown got drafted and came in and he was a contributor immediately
Mhm.
and kind of forced his way into that conversation. So yeah, the first two make sense. Haven't signed Dwayne Brown. Don't know what he's doing. The other week he was talking about Carolina and quarterback. I mean, that's no
Yeah.
secret, right? But I mean, offensive tackle makes sense. Quarterback makes sense. Corner, I'm intrigued by that
Yeah.
situation.
And the Seahawks do have 9 picks in the 2022 NFL draft, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with those.
Wonder if that number expands to more, or if it shoots down with how John Schneider likes to trade those picks here and there. So we'll see how that goes.
And in a little bit more, I don't even know what word would be appropriate for this. I guess frightening news. NFL executives believe that the Seahawks wide receiver DK Metcalf can be had at the right price, despite the Seahawks saying that it has no plans for a trade and, of course, hoping to extend him. Apparently, there's belief that of the possibility of him leaving.
Well, it's funny because just like an hour ago, DK kind of addressed this himself, and I'll throw this up here on the screen so we can see it, because JPA Football is a good account on Twitter. They kind of are on top of rumors and things like that. And they tweeted basically what you just said, and here's DK's reply to that. Haven't heard anything per DK Metcalf 14. So it's interesting. But I mean, Bell and I talk about things before we go on air, right? Like what's happened, obviously what we're going to talk about in the show. Would DK be moved? Now, we've been in this position before. Kind of. Well, they're different, with Russell Wilson and his agent Mark Rodgers talking about a trade, pushing a trade, talking about potential teams, talking about wanting more involvement in the offense, wanting more protection. Haven't heard anything, at least from DK's camp, right?
Yeah.
But also it's funny, on Seahawks Twitter, the word intent has been used a lot. They intended to keep Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
They intend to extend DK Metcalf, but also with the money that wide receiver. I mean, we talked about it last week with Tyreek Hill, right? The money that the wide receiver position, the wide receiver market has been getting. I don't know how. One, if what DK wants money wise, right? If he wants to be in that top area,
I would think so.
Yeah. And two, if John Schneider is willing to pay that, and that's the thing with Denver, right? When Russell Wilson's contract comes up in 2 years, or if they want to restructure it before that, he's going to want big money.
Mm-hmm.
You know that.
Mm-hmm.
Let alone Rodgers' contract. Matthew Stafford got a big extension. He's going to want big money.
Yeah.
And John Schneider wouldn't have been willing to pay $50 million a year at the quarterback spot. So I'm interested to see what that extension looks. I mean, I'd be happy just to get the extension out of the way. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Throw the blank check here. Go DK, sign it, do what you want. But are you going to, like, if you ask me if I think he's going to be traded, I don't know. Because last time I said no to someone being traded, that ended up being wrong. And I got laughed about it in the comment section. And I get it. It makes sense, right? But I can tell you for sure, I would say no. Because, talked about the leadership role he's going to take in the last few weeks,
Mm-hmm.
right? He talked about with Bobby being gone and Russell being gone. He said he wants to be the guy, right? Tyler Lockett, love Tyler Lockett, but I'm not saying he's old. But I mean, when you think about the Seahawks offense, he's kind of the guy that comes to mind for me. So I would hope that you'd keep him around, because people are, you could trade him for a first round pick. I have no idea what a first round pick is. It's more of it's a gamble. It is a gamble. With DK Metcalf, you know what you're getting, and he's getting better, right? He played. The report came out, I think, last week or a few weeks ago, that he was playing on a broken foot or something.
Yeah.
From week 4, and still making an impact, right? So this is a guy that is still getting better, and you know what you're getting. You know what you have, as opposed to, let's get a first round pick, and I have no idea how he'll succeed, right? I would rather go with a proven commodity as opposed to not.
but we've been blindsided before.
Yes, we have.
So
yes, we have.
Take it with a grain of salt. But as soon as something breaks, of course, we'll have more to talk about. And just further on DK Metcalf, there was a
less important news.
Yeah, less important news. His meals for the day.
His diet, the DK diet.
Yeah, the DK diet. I guess I should say one meal. He has one meal, a cup of coffee, and 3 to 4 bags of candy a day. And I'm just going to say that I think DK has a great sense of humor for saying that, because I don't believe that could be somebody's diet.
I mean, you see those pre-draft pictures of him, and his. I think he's might be a little bit of a joke.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's a joke, right? But a little bit lighthearted as compared to what we were just talking about.
Yeah,
and we need that with the next headline that we're going to look at here, because
for sure, maybe that's him stepping in his leadership role, taking away from the seriousness here.
Yeah. So.
In other news, Bobby Wagner has found a team. He signed with the LA Rams on a 5-year, $5 million contract. And that can go up to $65 million with incentives. While some of us may be upset that he went to a division rival, we should remember that Bobby did not choose to leave. And so hope for his success in this next chapter.
Well, and then the thing that's always going to be interesting look at the cap money, right? That's 65 million guaranteed. Potentially with incentives.
Yeah.
Bobby Wagner is his own agent. He doesn't have an agent. He's representing himself. So he worked himself into that after we saw the report the other week that the Rams didn't want to pay him a 1-year, $11 million deal.
Yeah.
So the Rams are already cash strapped, right? And he works his way into that.
Way to go.
You can increase that $15 million potentially with incentives. So he gets to go back to Southern California, where he's from. He gets to compete on a team that just won the Super Bowl and has tons of talent still. Play with an Aaron Donald in front of him. Who else is on? Jalen Ramsey out at corner. Mm-hmm. So he gets to be on a loaded team. He gets to get paid, and he gets to go home effectively in a way. I know he said that Seattle's home, and I appreciate Bobby for saying that. But yeah, it's if anybody is feeling any sort of anger or like anything negative towards him, it doesn't make any sense for you to feel that way.
Yeah.
I get feeling upset that he's gone, right? But feeling upset that he chose the Rams.
How could you not?
talk to John Schneider or Pete Carroll about that. Because one, they didn't let him know that he was getting cut. They didn't ask him to take a pay cut and then just cut him. Mm-hmm. So that's on them. That's all in the front office. So yeah, it's at the end of the day, good for Bobby.
Yeah, definitely. And on April 3rd, the Seahawks off-season dates were announced. Voluntary off-season workout program starts April 19th. Voluntary OTAs are May 23rd, 25th, 26th, and 31st, as well as June 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and 9th. And mandatory minicamp will be June 14th through the 16th. Moving on to some league news here. On the 29th, the NFL approved a playoff overtime change. So both teams will now be guaranteed a possession in a postseason overtime under a rule change passed Tuesday by NFL owners. So I know as soon as I saw that, there were tweets coming in about, oh my gosh, you think about like what this team could have done back in this year, or, so it'll be interesting moving forward. But I think a lot of happy people.
It's also kind of interesting that it's only a playoffs thing, and I get that, right? But yeah, I mean, you talk about like the Bills last year, right? But it's always kind of funny. The two games that come to mind when I think about that rule are that game now and the Tim Tebow game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where Tebow throws a slant to Demaryius Thomas, may Demaryius Thomas rest in peace, and he takes it all the way. And the Steelers, I think, had a really good team that year, and I think the Broncos were a wild card team, and because of that rule, touchdown, and then the game's over.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting that it's just regular season, but at least it's in place. At least they did something about it.
Yeah, I mean, they worked hard enough to get there, so at least now both teams will have a chance to secure a win. In other news, Cam Newton is looking for the right fit. He is still a free agent, correct?
Yep.
And is reportedly weighing offers from several teams. So, right fit. What do you think that means?
I mean, I'm sure he wants a starter role, right? But also being able to, I I don't know. I wonder. I'm sure he wants to be in a somewhat winning position.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you're a quarterback and you're looking for a hole to fill on a team, if a team's looking for a quarterback, they usually aren't that close to winning, right? Because usually that's the big spot. I don't know what positions are open for that right now, really. Because the ones that I had thought about, like in Indianapolis, comes to mind, and we'll get to that next with this next headline. They've got Matt Ryan now, and it's not like Cam Newton can sit for a year or two behind a guy. He's getting up there too.
Yeah.
So it's probably a situation that might not be there right now for him. It's probably pretty tough because I'm sure he wants to win because he's getting up there. I don't think he needs a ton of money because he's already made a good amount. I think it's just winning.
Yeah.
And being in a situation to win now. That's what I would think.
Okay. Well, hopefully he finds that right fit soon enough. And just as you mentioned, the Colts owner says that Wentz's arrow was a mistake, did not hold back on that. Jim Irsay didn't hold back any feelings, said former quarterback Carson Wentz, for us, the fit just wasn't right. So strong feelings there, just being let out.
It's always interesting around the league when you see headlines like this, where whether it's someone in the front office or the actual owner says something like this, and you look at Seattle where that normally doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting because that might come back to bite you. I know we've seen things in the sports world where karma really shows up, but I don't know if I'm in that position. And Carson Wentz didn't play horribly. That Jaguars game in week 18 was a little odd and really disappointing if you're a Colts fan. But, at the end of the day, he wasn't bad. He wasn't horrible. So it says a lot to me about how you treat players, I guess, or how what kind of message you're sending to free agents, right? Or guys that you're going to draft, like, hey, if I don't do so well, they might toss me aside and talk bad about me afterwards.
Yeah,
so
that's not a good.
That's how I look at that.
So if you have nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. On March 30th, Bucks Bruce Arians retires as head coach, starts new role as senior football consultant. And defensive coordinator Todd Bowles has been announced as the team's new head coach. Bowles gets a 5-year Bowles gets a 5-year deal. And Arians spent 3 seasons as the Buccaneers head coach.
Do you have anything to think about this in relating to Tom Brady coming back? Because I know when Brady initially retired, I think Arians was asked, "Oh, is the door open for Tom to come back?" And he had a really interesting answer. It's like, "I don't really care." Kind of threw some expletives in there. We're moving on. And some people are like, well, do you think it has any impact that Tom came back? Because apparently before he came back, he was told that Arians was going to retire. I don't know. That's a rumor. But do you maybe think that had any influence on it?
Of course, he denies that there was any rift in their relationship. But the one thing that it did make me think about was Antonio Brown, actually, and his claim that players were playing hurt and it didn't matter if you were hurt, you still had to be out there. So I wasn't sure if maybe he was trying to fight some of that controversy as well as possibly not getting along with Tom Brady or whatever that might have been, but interesting for sure. And do other teams have a senior football consultant?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Wasn't sure if that was just kind of something they
made
threw for it.
We got something for you.
Yeah. So, okay. No, yeah, that was definitely the first thing that it made me think of was Antonio Brown and how true those claims might be. So moving forward here, on April 2nd, Colin Kaepernick threw at the Michigan spring game. He continues to wait for an opportunity to rejoin the NFL, says that he can help make a team better, can help them win games, and has told others that he's open to accepting a backup role. So really just trying to get back in it.
Yeah, I think that would be what he would get anyway, regardless of what happens. Would it be a backup role? But look, however you feel about the guy, I know that at the end of his time with the Niners, he wasn't putting up huge numbers. I get that, right? But you can't look at certain guys in the NFL that are in third string or second string roles and tell me they're better than him. And you're not at least giving him a tryout. If teams were giving him tryouts and they weren't signing him, okay, I get it. He's bad. right? But no one's given him at least a tryout, right? So I'm not normally a big fan. Which one's at Michigan? Is it Jim Harbaugh? I think it's
Jim Harbaugh. Yeah.
I'm not the biggest fan of him just because of his time with the Niners and even back with Stanford when he, things he said to Richard Sherman. But it was good on him, I think, to allow that to happen, right, and to give him an opportunity. And really, I'm just waiting till the day that it pops up that we see that he got at least a tryout, right? Because we haven't seen that. We have not seen that.
Yeah, for sure. So all the luck to Kaepernick. We did see that last throw that he completed, and he didn't look rusty at all. So hopefully he finds his way back. New claims surfaced against the Commanders as well. The House receives info alleging Washington kept ticket revenue required to be shared with other NFL teams.
Yeah, I guess that's stuff that's supposed to be always shared. And so on top of the claims against, I forgot his name, Schneider, their owner, I mean, there's more stuff piling up, and you've got to wonder when is this going to be enough? Their ownership, that organization as a whole, I mean, it happens with the Spirit in the NWSL. Their Washington owner, terrible person. And it's like, why is this a trend with Washington teams? I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but I would like to see the Commanders finally kick him out. I mean, it should have been happening. It should have happened a while ago.
Yeah.
And I just hope that maybe this is now, something that they will get out. Because, I mean, this is like, a lot of this is illegal.
Yeah, so, something's definitely just not working up there, and they for sure need change soon. Moving forward, the only thing looking ahead is the NFL draft, which will take place April 28th through the 30th.
Yeah, so that's all that's kind of on the docket outside of what Bell talked about with the off-season dates. But I think that's kind of what we have to look forward to next. Is, I mean, free agency is kind of slowed to a mild dripping. There's nothing really going on. And now the draft is kind of where we look at next for the Seahawks team to improve. So with that being said, we kind of head to I almost say the brunt of the information this week, especially with what happened this morning. So we'll jump right into our Seattle Mariners this past week, wrapping up. We're getting towards the end of spring training here, getting closer to actual regular season baseball that counts. We'll look at our recap for the 7 games that took place over the past week. First of which being March 28th versus the Texas Rangers, winning that game 6-5. Player of the game, right fielder Mitch Haniger, going 2 for 3 with 2 RBIs. March 29th versus the Kansas City Royals, losing that game 4-11. Player of the game, catcher Luis Torrens, going 2 for 3 with 2 RBIs and 1 time being left on base. March 30th at the Chicago Cubs, losing that game 5-8. Player of the game, left fielder Jared Kelenic, going 2 for 3 with a run and an RBI. March 31st versus the Cleveland Guardians, winning that game 3-2. Player of the game, second baseman Adam Frazier, going 2 for 3 with 2 RBIs. We'll now switch to our bottom 3. April 1st at the Colorado Rockies, losing that game 1-2. Player of the game, first baseman Abraham Toro, going 1 for 3 with an RBI and being left on base 1 time. April 2nd versus the Milwaukee Brewers, winning that game 4-3. Player of the game, first baseman Steven Souza Jr. That's kind of, I emphasize first baseman because he's normally an outfielder, going 1 for 1 with 2 RBIs. And then finishing up the week, April 3rd at the Kansas City Royals, winning that game 10-8. Player of the game, shortstop Dylan Moore, going 1 for 3 with 1 run, 3 RBIs, and being walked once. I could speak more about that Royals game because somebody that's kind of the majority of the news in Mariners land this week had a home run in that game, and Jared Kelenic hit a 2-run bomb. But with that being said, we'll head over to our Player of the Week segment, which has garnered Bell some attention in the past few weeks. But it's funny because I put this in last night before we even learned about what we'll talk about later on.
Yeah.
And you agreed with me. And so Player of the Week for us on both ends is center fielder, young number 3 prospect in all of baseball, Julio Rodriguez. So in 31 at-bats up to this point, has 13 hits, 9 runs, 4 doubles, 3 homers, 9 RBIs, 26 total bases, walked 3 times, 3 stolen bases, a .419 batting average, a .471 on base percentage, an .839 slugging percentage, and a 1.309 on base plus slugging. Julio, I mean, it kind of felt like this last year with Kelenic knocking on the door. I talk about knocking. Julio kind of bust the door down and kind of obliterated it.
Yeah.
It's just You talk about it's always the talk, coming into spring training, who's going to really make their mark and say, I need to be on that opening day roster. Last year, it was guys like Kelnick, Taylor Trammell worked his way onto that opening day roster. Julio, 419 average is just outrageous. You look at some of the key plays. Something that is going to be looked back on is that inside the park home run he hit. I believe it was against the Rockies. The number 3 prospect in baseball, I think he should be higher. But as a guy that he just loves having fun, he's like 21, 22.
Wow.
He's only a little bit older than me. And has really left a mark and should really be a lot of fun to see him at T-Mobile Park all season. Do you want to say anything about what you've been able to garner since then?
Just looking at all of the players for the week and their performances, and it was hard not to agree with Chuck. I did see your selection before I made mine, but it was really just hard not to go with him because he was everywhere. I looked at every single stat, and he had something on every single stat, and so it was a no-brainer.
And I think it should be said that he's what do we say, like 20, very early 20s, and he's going to be a rookie this year. It's very important to remember that he's going to make mistakes, but he's going to be a hell of a lot of fun to watch. He's got a big bat, he's got a big smile, he's a really fun personality. Something too that I won't say the guy's name. I don't know how much you know about it, but last year, right before the season began, the Mariners had it was a front office guy, and it was like the Bellevue Breakfast Club Rotary. They had a Zoom meeting for whatever reason, and this guy was on it, and he basically he said some really bad things about a lot of players. He basically said they were upset that they were paying interpreters. And he talked about Julio Rodriguez. He's a great player, but he needs to work on his English. Julio he taught himself English as a teenager. And has been very insistent about taking interviews in English. This is a guy that is he's a great guy off the field. From everything that I've garnered, every media member that's talked about him, everyone that's interacted with him, it's amazing to me to see the guy that he is, right, and the talent that he's got. And it should be a lot of fun to just have him up. I think he's earned it. He'll make mistakes. I know he'll make some mistakes, but he's a rookie.
And bear with him. The language will get better, of course.
So I'm just excited to see that. And it was really cool to get the official confirmation that, hey, he's going to be on the opening day roster. Because that was kind of something I know some of the media members were wondering, how can you keep him off of this roster? How has he not been announced yet? There you go. So we'll head into injury news. We'll take the fun down a little bit and look at injuries. On the 30th of the month, it was announced that Evan White has had successful surgery to repair his sports hernia. The timeline to return on that is still to be determined. I know we talked about it last week. Looking at it on a standard recovery, right, it's 6 to 12 weeks. But this is Major League Baseball. They've got more resources at hand, and I don't know the extent of it. I don't know. Like, what do you think about it? Because in 2020, when in his rookie year, he won a Gold Glove at the first base position. He had some struggles as a hitter. Last year, struggled as a hitter in the early part of the season that he played, and then suffered an injury, just wasn't able to come back. The plan this year was to have him in AAA start the year so that he could get his bat going, and you have an injury again. If you look at any team that's gunning for the playoffs, right, it's got a lot of talent on it, and there's no timeline to be able to wait and say, hey, we can wait for you to come back, and you've already got somebody that's taken over his position. Is, at least in your mind, Bell, do you think is time running out for him? Because I know he's really young. This is just a question. I'm not saying that it is, but Ty France has taken his spot. I know they've talked about him wanting to play in the outfield. I don't know. Do you think maybe a position change would help him? Does he trade bait at this point? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Oh, that's tough.
In
I don't want
to.
Yeah, I don't want to say that he's trade bait, but that's kind of where my mind is going.
Right? Because if you look at any other sport where if you get passed up in your spot, even in any other job, right? If someone came over and you had a better host here, if I go down, I don't know, take my voice box out, right? you need someone else to fill in, and they do really well.
Yeah, then there's that replacement for your role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's tough, right?
In any sport, there's that feels like that player that gets hurt and never really makes a full comeback. They just continue to get hurt.
Yep.
I don't know. You really hope that maybe he can figure it out. But at this point, yeah, I would say that things aren't looking too good for him.
Because Ty France, acquired in that Padres trade. He's always had a nice bat, but he really showed out defensively, and probably should have won the Gold Glove. Say that out there. I think Matt Olson won it. Sure, fine, whatever. But I think it's Ty France's job to lose, and I don't think he's losing anytime soon unless he regresses. So yeah, it's a tough situation with Evan White. And then on the second, relief pitcher Ken Giles suffered a setback in his recovery. So background for you: Ken Giles is a bona fide closer. He had a great season the last time he played in 2019, I believe it was, with the Blue Jays. The Mariners signed him to a 2-year deal. It might have been 2020. 2-year deal. They knew that he was going to be injured last year, but they signed him to a 2-year deal, so it was effectively a 1 year, right? But they wanted to lock him down. He was recovering from Tommy John surgery, and he suffered a setback. So the right-handed pitcher will begin the season on the injured list, which it's disappointing, but you want to make sure that. The bullpen was the strength of this team last year, so I think he'll be fine. I think we'll be fine without him for the time being, but come midseason, come those final months of the year where, the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, the Yankees are coming around and you need to close the door, you're going to need guys like him.
Mm-hmm.
So just hope that, no more setbacks, hopefully. So with that being said, as we approach opening day, the roster is being whittled down so we can get to the final. It's like the NFL where we get down to the final 53, right? We're whittling it down here. On the 28th, the team reassigned left-handed pitcher Kyle Bird to the minor league camp. On the 29th, a few roster moves were made. Outfielder Taylor Trammell was optioned to AAA Tacoma. Right-handed pitcher Matt Festa and left-handed pitcher Ryan Buckner were reassigned to the minor league camp, and the team would send minor league right-handed pitcher Connor Phillips to the Cincinnati Reds as part of the Suarez-Winker trade. He was the player to be named later. He was the number 15 overall prospect in the Mariners farm system. I know that there were tweets about it right before we found out that Jerry Dipoto was like, "Oh, we hated to lose this guy," and so you think that, right? You think, who'd they trade? Connor Phillips, nice arm. He's got some nice stuff, but in what I was able to garner from it, scouts were kind of split on him. They're like, some guys really love his stuff. Some guys thought he was a little erratic. So best of luck to Connor Phillips in Cincinnati, but ultimately I'm okay with that.
Okay.
On the 31st, the Mariners named Robbie Ray as the opening day starter on April 7th in Minnesota. So it'll be a Ray day on opening day, but that's, like I've talked to Bell about, that could be something that gets moved back with the possibility of snow on opening day in Minnesota. So like we were talking about, I don't know how you don't have a roof on your ballpark and you're in Minnesota. We talked about NFL.com and their rankings. MLB.com on the 31st of the month ranked the Mariners as the second best farm system in all of baseball. We'll look at some of their top 100 prospects. Obviously, Julio Rodriguez, the number 3 player prospect in all of baseball, taking the number 3 spot. Shortstop Noel V. Marte taking the number 11 spot. Right-handed pitcher George Kirby, the number 32. Right-handed pitcher Emerson Hancock, the 82nd. Catcher Harry Ford, the 93rd. And right-handed pitcher Matt Brash, the 98th. Interestingly enough, there are 2 guys actually will be on the opening day roster in Brash and Rodriguez. So that April 1st, right-handed pitcher Levi Stout was reassigned to minor league camp. On the 2nd, the Mariners named Brash as the team starter. So there's that. The 5th starter. So that was kind of something that we had been wondering about, who was going to be that final starter in the rotation. Excuse me. And then this is a little bit lighthearted. Per an inside source, the Mariners City Connect collection will come in 2023. We'll get to it here with league news, but the Nationals had their jerseys. For City Connect, sold really well. So there's that. and we'll finally learn about that next year. In more roster moves, right-handed pitcher George Kirby, right-handed pitcher Sal Romano, infielder Eric Mejia were all re-signed to the minor league camp, and catcher Chance Sisco was released. On the 3rd, the Mariners agreed to terms with Mitch Haniger to avoid arbitration. The outfielder gets signed to 2022 on a 1-year, $7.75 million deal. Left-handed pitcher Nick Margevicius optioned to AAA Tacoma. And then on the 4th, this morning, the team found out that Julio Rodriguez will be on the Mariners opening day roster, and we found out that opening day is sold out.
That's a great picture, by the way.
I mean, come on. He got the glasses. You can see there, he's got his custom batting practice bat. Come on.
Looks like a starter to me.
Yeah. So with that, Belle, can I have you look at league notes here? And we'll get to that City Connect jersey, which I think is really cool, actually.
Yeah. So on the 31st, it was announced that the National City Connect jerseys set a record. Their Washington's Cherry Blossom jersey sets first day City Connect sales record, beating next best by 58%. On April 1st, it was announced that the MLB would mic up the umpires for reviews. Umpires will use a microphone to announce replay review decisions to the crowd starting next week. And then on April 3rd, Carlos Beltran speaks on 2017. Former Astro addresses if there is a stain on the team's title during their 2017 scandal by saying, "We were wrong."
I don't even want to touch the Houston stuff. That's this whole thing. But I don't know. You and I are kind of accustomed to the NFL and the NBA where, I don't know how much they do at the NBA towards the whole arena. They do it on the broadcast, right? Where the refs will announce what actually happened, right? Like in the NFL, they do that.
Yeah.
But the NBA know that they'll talk like on the major broadcasts. They'll talk to the broadcasters to explain the ruling so that they can pass that on. But I think this is good. I mean, you kind of want that transparency, especially, with the calls for robot umpires.
Yes.
You kind of want that transparency. You want to know what's going on. You want to know why that decision was made as opposed to, that was overturned, right? So I think that's good overall. I mean, I don't want to touch the Astros thing, but I think that's a positive step, especially with all the lockouts done. Like you're saying, you don't want to ruin that anymore with games getting pushed back. So with that being said, the Mariners now sit at an 8-6 record. We'll look here at their upcoming games. April 4th versus the Arizona Diamondbacks at 1:10. That's game's currently going on. The Mariners are currently down 2-0.
No.
In the bottom of the 4th. April 5th at the Cincinnati Reds at 12:05. So that wraps up spring training. We'll get done with those. And then we head over to regular season. We'll have regular season baseball, hopefully. Right.
If Minnesota has good weather.
Yeah. The 7th, 7th, 9th, and 10th, the team will take on the Minnesota Twins for the opening series out in Minnesota on the road. Minnesota has some talent. They've got some pieces. Byron Buxton, they signed Carlos Correa to a weird deal with a lot of options. I know that last year to begin the season, the Twins kind of give the Mariners some headaches. So we'll see how that goes, but it'll be exciting to just get meaningful baseball back. Yeah. Regardless of if it gets. I mean, I'm sure we'll have it by the time we see you on Monday, but I'm just happy to have it back. Just happy to have it back, and really excited for Julio Rodriguez. So with that being said,
hopefully the weather doesn't delay things any further because we've missed enough games for the season.
Yeah, we would have had regular season games for you right now.
Yeah,
because the season's supposed to begin on the 31st. Yep. So yeah, with that being said, now not too much heading into storm-related news. I mean, we've got some Hall of Fame stuff, but also a team that technically isn't around.
Yeah, it was nice to see them on here for some news. Yeah.
So Belle, I'll let you take that over.
Yes. Going into the Storm section here, former Storm player Swin Cash will be inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. She is a 2022 inductee. Congratulations to Swin Cash. Just a couple of her accolades here. She's a 4-time WNBA All-Star, 3-time WNBA champion, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, champion in 2010, All-Star in 2011, All-Star MVP with Seattle, and current executive with the New Orleans Pelicans. So still very much in the swing of things here for basketball. Again, congrats to her.
Mm-hmm.
And just on the related Hall of Fame news, former Sonics head coach George Karl is in the same Hall of Fame class, will also be inducted. He coached 5 NBA teams over a 27-year career, 6 all-time in career wins, 2013 NBA Coach of the Year, 22 playoff runs, coached the Sonics from 92 to 98.
Now, you don't have to look at all of those numbers, but just
just to give you an idea of what
peek at some of that,
right,
I mean, the All-Star game I mean, it's not the biggest thing because it's the All-Star game, right? I don't know how much you feel about All-Star games, but to be, obviously, you're going to be like the best coach in that conference,
yes,
right? So you look at it, third in the, so we'll just look at it here like this. We'll go by year. So in the years he coached the Sonics, third in the West, first in the West, fourth, first, second. Never finished below fourth. What was it? First year conference finals. Next year, first round exit. One of those was to the Lakers. 95-96, losing to the Bulls in the finals. I mean, what? The 72-10 team, Jordan, Pippen, Rodman, Kerr.
It's tough.
It's tough, because had it been anybody else, the Sonics probably would have had 2 titles at this current point in time. These were really good teams. Obviously Kemp and Peyton, but there's a lot of talent on those teams. And you got to have a good coach, right? Because, I mean, like we've looked at any other teams that we cover, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have somebody to right the ship, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
And then losing in that final year in the conference semifinals. So, a perennial playoff team. And I know that Coach Karl has been really adamant, obviously, about getting the Sonics back. So, I mean, let's just look at this for a second. We'll put that. Look at what's in the corner there. You can see that little Sonics logo. Isn't that nice?
It is nice
to have up there. You know?
It'd be exciting to get that back, but I'm gonna
probably a few years.
Won't hold my breath just yet.
Yeah, so we'll see about that. But it was nice to look at that. So I'll let you finish out with a little tidbit here about Storm.
Yes, on April 4th, Steph Talbot and Ezi Magbagor named to all WNBL first team. So
getting some run in the off season, I guess, down in Australia.
Yeah.
Keeping fresh,
okay.
Was that a Men at Work song? We're not gonna oh God. But yeah, no, I mean, it's good to see, especially Ezi, with what we talked about last week, right?
She's
getting that
well.
development going to be really important. And even Steph Talbot, somebody that's going to be, a spot up shooter, can give you some defense, can really need, I mean, like we said, any contending team is going to need a good bench, and you're going to need that. Steph Talbot can be a really important piece of that. So good to see that. At least it's always nice to see accolades, but we're getting close to camps in a few weeks. April 23rd, that preseason game. So that's kind of what we've got to look forward to. And I don't see too much happening. I think the pieces have kind of fallen into place for free agency. So
yeah, it'll be nice to see who steps up. Other than the big three, of course. I saw a video of Brianna Stewart shooting threes the other day, and she looked fantastic. So very exciting.
Just that too, with Stewie, keeping everybody fresh, right? And that's also goes to the importance of having a good bench, being able to rotate in, and you've got your second unit, and you don't have to worry about giving up a bunch of points.
Yes,
right? And say, okay, I got to get my starters back out there, right?
Yeah.
So that'll be a lot of fun, and it'll be good to have us here to actually look at Storm games, and be able to cover that, because I think their season ended before we actually started Circling Seattle Sports on Converge. So we will. I'm excited for that. That'll be really good. Obviously, both of us can have stress about how that'll work out, but just having the WNBA back will be good. And it's Sue's last year, so there's bound to be some interesting things taking place. Head over to our Seattle Sounders this segment. April 2nd versus the Minnesota United FC Loons, winning that game 2-1 on the road out in Minnesota. Player of the game, João Paulo, with 1 goal and 84.8% passing percentage and winning 3 tackles. So Seattle gets back after the international break, after the men's national team for the U.S. has locked in a World Cup spot for the first time since 2014. So good for them. Jordan Morris and Christian Roldan being a part of that team. But you go and play Minnesota, and it was kind of funny to me, actually. The one of the Minnesota broadcasters said that this game was sort of a battle of the Western Conference heavyweights. Now, it's funny to me because, Minnesota, I know that the Sounders play them, I think it was in 2020, for the Western Conference title. So that's saying something, right? But Minnesota, to call them both American heavyweights, let me just read you some stats here, okay?
Yes.
So trophies between the teams, Minnesota has none. Seattle has 7. Cup finals, Seattle has 10. Minnesota has none. Playoff appearances, Seattle has 13. Minnesota has 3. And head-to-head wins, Seattle has 9. Minnesota has 1.
That's very lopsided.
So kind of funny. Callum Williams, Minnesota United announcer, called them 2 American heavyweights. Just a little fact-checking there, But Minnesota's a good club. They're a good club. I won't say that they're not. But just an interesting tidbit from the broadcast there. So Seattle getting 3 big points on the road. You've seen me, since the MLS season began, really worried about the situation of this team. But we get some good news on the injury front. There's some good and some bad. So we'll get into that. On the 29th, in the first of the injury news, defender Yamar did not play on April 2nd against Minnesota United as he was recovering still from the injury that he suffered in that game against the LA Galaxy a few weeks ago. And then on April 2nd, the day of the Minnesota United game, we found out that Nico Ladero, Jimmy Medranda, and Raul Ruidiaz were all active after being out for an extended period of time. So to get those guys back, Ladero used to be, kind of the key cog in the midfield there. Christian Roldan's kind of stepped up. João Paulo stepped up. But still, it's valuable to have that, experience, the talent. Jimmy Medranda, a really good piece to bring off the bench, and Raul Ruidiaz has been your striker, your killer up top for ever since you've had him. So to have those guys active in your lineup is important and really important for the game that we have in upcoming. But we have a team note to look at, a couple team notes. On March 30th, it was announced that the home match that was slated for this Saturday, the 9th, against FC Cincinnati, was rescheduled to September 27th at 7 p.m. at Lumen Field. It's still Lumen Field. But that game had to be rescheduled due to the Sounders' advancement in the CONCACAF Champions League semifinals. So that game get pushed back. But
to September.
Yeah. Season kind of getting shoveled there, and especially with the World Cup coming up at the end of the year. But glad that it just got rescheduled, and I'm getting tired. I got tired of canceling games with the team that we just had before this. But I guess when you win things, sometimes stuff's got to get moved around. Then on the 4th, we talked about João Paulo being our player of the game for the win against Minnesota. JP would be named to the MLS Team of the Week for this past week. So good for João. So we look at upcoming. The Sounders record sits at 2 wins, 1 draw, and 2 losses. No, pardon me, 1 loss and 2 draws in MLS play, sitting at 9th in the Western Conference. Looking ahead, April 6th, this Wednesday versus New York City FC at 7 o'clock. This is a CONCACAF Champions League semifinal game. This is leg 1 of 2. It's really important that you go ahead and you take care of business in this first leg because you'd like to have a cushion in the second leg, right? And, we talked about with Raul and Nico getting back, you want to – Brian Schmetzer said you want to win trophies. You want to win in everything that you do. This is a chance to do that. You win this leg. Well, not leg. You win this round, you go to the final. And no MLS team has won this trophy. So it'd be something to do. So with that being said, we head over to our Seattle Kraken. And, Belle, why don't I have you look at those scores?
Yeah. So on March 28th against the LA Kings, they won 6-1. Player of the game was one player of the game. We got 2 different ones here. Was Chris Drieger. Okay, I didn't want to say that wrong. With 36 saves and a .973% save percentage. Player of the game 2 was Adam Larson with 1 goal, 1 point.
3 plus minus.
3 plus minus, 1 shot on goal and 3 hits. On the 30th versus the Las Vegas Golden Knights, they lost 0-3, and we have no player of the game for that because a shutout loss and garners no player of the game. On April 1st, they played the Golden Knights once again and lost 2-5. And the player of the game there was Will Borgen, 1 assist, 1 point, 2 plus-minus, 6 hits, and 1 block. On April 3rd, they played the Dallas Stars and won 4-1. Player of the game won, again, Chris Drieger, 29 saves, a .967 save percentage. And the player of the game, too, was Carson Soucy, 2 assists, 2 points, 1 plus-minus, 1 shot on goal, and 4 hits. And I just will say that it feels like Carson Soucy is on the player of the game list very often.
Oh, so it's I like that you point that out, right? Because we had the trade deadline episode, right? And there were reports that came out that Soucy had been called about. Teams were like, "Hey, are you gonna trade that guy?" And they said
we're interested.
They wanted to keep him.
Yeah,
and Carson's been able to really be. I mean, I looked at the advanced metrics side of things. I'm not the biggest analytics guy, right? I'm not saying no to it. I just don't know it all, right? Soucy was at the top of the list for player of the game in terms of total value for that game against Dallas. I wanted to highlight Drieger. Take a moment to highlight Drieger because in his last however many starts, I'd say maybe 5, he's been excellent. You look at obviously he didn't have shutouts, but he was excellent, and he was in goal for that March 30th game that we talked about. That those goals really weren't on him, and it's tough as a goalkeeper because you will get goals that aren't on you.
Yeah.
It's not like some sports where you can control everything, It was really interesting, and I wanted to mention that because in the press conference the morning of the April 1st game, Philip Grubauer was in net, and the question was asked, why is Gruby in net as opposed to Drieger, who's had some great starts?
Mm-hmm.
And goalkeeper management has been something that's been talked about all season with Hextall. We'll talk about at the end of the year. But Hextall said he wanted good play and leadership in net. Now, what that means, I don't know, because I've talked to a few of my guys that I work with in the press box at these games, and they said, yeah, we don't know what that's about. That's really weird to say, and that's kind of ironic. Because as a goalie, it's like, I don't know how much the leadership aspect's kind of weird, because goalies really don't get the captain's patch or the alternate captain's patch anyway. So it's just that this leadership idea was kind of funny because then, he talks about that the morning of, and then Seattle loses that game. 5 goals happen. I had a buddy who asked about it, how he thought Grubauer played. And I like Grubauer, but just the comment that was made is something that stuck with me. And Hextall was like, oh, he played fine. And that's where it ended. That's it. Yeah, that's where it ended.
Oh
but Chris Drieger, the thing with him was, I don't know how much of it you followed with the team starting. He was brought in to be the starter this year. In the offseason. And then we found out that Grubauer was going to be a free agent. He wasn't going to sign with the Avalanche. So I was like, oh, you've got a guy who almost won the goalkeeper trophy last year, and he's on the market. You want to go get him.
Yeah.
And in hockey, it's really important to have 2 good goalkeepers because you're going to have to switch them out. You can't have one guy play all of the games. And so it probably, like, if I brought you in to be a co-host, right, and I'd tell you this is your job. You're going to be the person that's going to be here. And then I have someone else.
Someone new and shiny.
And I said, Salman, he's a free agent. I really want him in my spot right here. And what does that do to your psyche?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
No,
like, you told me I was going to be here. And now I'm like playing second fiddle. I'm the unwanted person. So it's been tough for him. And so I applaud the fact that he's been able to have good games despite kind of the situation he's in. And I hope there's no rift between the 2 goalies.
You would hope that not between them, of course, between management maybe. But.
Yeah. So I just wanted to highlight that. But yeah, Carson Soucy, it's been interesting to see that teams called about him at the deadline. And since then, they talked about it in the broadcast. I think it was Allison Lucan who does the analytics part. So he looks like he's playing more free, like a little looser on his sticks, not worried about playing to a certain level. He knows he's going to be on the team. And he's able to be himself. So that's really good. We head over to our team news on the 1st of the month. Goalkeeper Joey Decord earns AHL Goaltender of the Month honors for March down with the Charlotte Checkers. His stats for the month of March, a 6-win, I think it was a 1-loss record, 1.55 goal allowed on average, and a .956 save percentage over the month of March. Also, in the first, forward Cole Lynn scored his first NHL goal of his career in a loss to the Golden Knights. On the 3rd of the month, forward Morgan Geekie played in his 100th NHL game. In league-related news, the Philadelphia Flyers' Keith Yandle, his Ironman streak ended on Saturday against the Maple Leafs. He did not see any action, so he ended his Ironman streak of 989 consecutive games played in the NHL.
Oh my gosh.
So that's a lot. Considering that there's like 80-something games in an NHL season. So he's
quite the record there.
That's just, it's not saying he started in all of them. He's got some action on it.
Yeah.
Kind of funny to look at. And I mean, just looking at that consistency is incredible to think about. So we look at upcoming for our Kraken here, looking to, well, I want to look at this first. In the press conference last night, a lot of the players before this have said, you want to finish out the season right. You want to build an identity. You want to improve. Mm-hmm. And they look like they've been doing that. But what Hextall said at the end of the night was really nice. He said that, you could go out there this final month. It's going to be a busy month. You want to go out there. You want to have fun. You want to win games. I don't know if I want to say you want to kick some ASS, and you just want to have fun doing all of it.
Yeah.
And it was good to see that because, despite me talking about the leadership thing with Hextall, what I will say about someone who's been in the press conferences, he always is really responsive to media. And I like that's that. So you'd like to just see improvement and that the team stays in it this last final month because they play a lot of teams that are battling for playoff spots. So we'll get to that here. In upcoming, the team record sits at 22 wins, 41 losses, 6 overtime losses, resulting in 50 points. They sit at 8th in the Pacific, and that hasn't changed for probably since the season began. Looking ahead, they will take on the St. Louis Blues on the road on April 6th at 5 o'clock. St. Louis has the 3rd overall spot in the Central Division, and 4th in the Western Conference. April 7th at the Chicago Blackhawks at 5:30. And then April 9th back here at Climate Pledge Arena versus the Calgary Flames, who are in a prime playoff spot at 4 o'clock. So all of those games, if you are in the Seattle area, I think even in the Washington area, maybe more so Pacific Northwest, if you've got Root Sports, you'll be able to watch it on Root Sports. If you're out of the market, those games are going to be on ESPN+. Okay. So we head over to Challenge Cup. Belle, why don't we look at what happened with our Reign here over the past week?
Yeah, so they pulled out a win against the Portland Thorns on April 2nd. Player of the game was Jess Fishlock with 1 assist, 3 shots, 3 fouls sustained, and 90 plus 5 minutes. And I did ask Charles before the show started why it wasn't Rose who scored the goal that we went with as our player of the game, but of course, he said Jess is kind of the heart of the team here.
If I'll have you, maybe I'll give you my Paramount Plus subscription so you can watch these games because all the subscriptions are annoying. I get that.
Yes.
Right. But, as someone who, my parents brought me to Reign games when they played over at Memorial Stadium at Seattle Center, and just watching them fully for every single home game last year and most all of the games on the road, that I was able to watch. Jess Fishlock is the little, I don't want to say little Jess, I apologize. She's really the engine of this team. Yeah. If you sit, I tell some of the people I sit with in the press box that we should just have a Jess cam so you can watch what Jess she does
at all times.
Just the heart. One league MVP last year was recognized for that. Has been with the team since its inception. Is just always active, always talking. Like if I didn't have windows in the press box here at Lumen Field, you could hear it. Like at Cheney Stadium, you could hear her talking to her teammates. It's just always active. Is running back on defense, is facilitating in the midfield, can still score.
Full-on leader.
Oh, God, yeah. And if you ask anybody in that locker room, I'm sure they would say the same exact thing. Lou Barnes wears the captain's arm patch, but you should almost have 2 for both of them, and I'm sure both would say that about each other. I like Roosevelt, I really do, and I'm really glad that she's part of the Reign. But a lot of that was set up by Jess, and Jess is the heartbeat of that team, so that's why I went with that.
Yeah, makes sense.
So injury news on the first the players that were out for that game against Portland were Lauren Barnes with a suspension. That's yellow card accumulation. So you get a couple yellow cards that build up. That's all that suspension was.
Yeah.
Alyssa Melanson with a knee injury and Megan Rapinoe with the calf. I know that it was asked if she's going to be fine. She's still progressing, still working on getting back. I know that Laura Harvey, head coach, wants to get her some minutes, but overall they're not really concerned with that injury. Do you want to look at some league news stuff here?
Yeah. On league news here, we have on March 30th, the USWNT negotiations extend talks with U.S. Soccer on new CBA to go beyond March 31st deadline in an effort to reach a deal on equal pay. How long has this actually been going on? Because I feel like I feel like it's been forever.
Years.
Yeah.
I know that there was they made some progress that we talked about a few weeks ago. Signing it, I think it was a few months ago, actually signing a deal, but I think more of it's still going on with the women's national team compared to what the men's national team gets.
So let's hope they get what they deserve. I don't think it will accumulate to that, but hopefully they get some sort of negotiation here soon. On March 31st, Hope Solo was arrested, the former Washington Husky and U.S. women's national team keeper charged with driving while impaired, resisting a public officer, and misdemeanor child abuse. Her 2 children were in the car while she was driving impaired.
Yeah, it sucks because, we're all about Seattle sports on this show, right? I mean, and to know that she was a Husky, right? And she played for the Reign for a period of time.
Yeah.
She would fit right in with this show, right? But she's just had a lot of controversy, a lot of stuff going on. And especially with this arrest, you don't wish ill on anybody, just wish she'd get some help.
Yeah.
But to have your kids in the car, and do that kind of thing it's just really dangerous. And you wish the best for the kids, obviously, but hope is able to
get some help
in that regard. So the Reign sit at a 2-win, 1-draw record. They sit at first in the Western Division. We don't actually have any games this upcoming week because the women's national team heads into a international break. So their next games are April 14th and 17th. So we'll get to that. We'll look at that next week. So we head over to our Seawolves here who had their bye week.
They did. Not much.
Relatively quiet in Seawolves territory for our Seattle rugby. But on the 31st of the month, team captain Reichert Hadding was named the Rugby Network's March Player of the Month. I know that we looked at him, was it last week or 2 weeks ago?
It was 2 weeks ago.
As the Player of the Week in Major League Rugby. But cool to see the captain continuing to perform, in a bright spot despite some of the losses. So not too much to look into it there, but so I know that we talked about it last week with the Seawolves coming off of that loss against LA and the Giltinis. You said a 4-4, right? You're still in the thick of the race for the playoffs. You're third in the Western Conference with 21 points. You're 2 points behind second place, and I think it's 5 points behind first place. So that's attainable. It's attainable, But coming off of the bye week, it's not going to be any easier. Because on April 9th, on Saturday, the team travels to New England to play the Free Jacks at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. If you want to watch that game, that is on the Rugby Network. It's free to sign up, so you don't have to pay anything. New England's 7-1. They lead the Eastern Conference.
Shoot.
It's not going to be an easy test.
A tough one. Yeah.
But, the Seawolves have shown that they've got fight, so I'm not going to put them out of it. I just know it's going to be a tough test for them. And, it's a great opportunity to show what you've got coming out of the bye week, adjust some things, fix some things, and take on a talented rugby club.
How many total games in their season?
It's a good question.
You're
putting me on this. I know we're kind of
just
around
wondering
the
how
midpoint
far
of the season. It goes until, I believe, late May.
Okay.
So we're kind of heading into I think we're about midway through.
Okay.
But it's really important. It's funny enough, we talk about the Seawolves. Rucky the Seawolf, the mascot, said that he wants to get you a sticker for your laptop.
That would be great.
So we'll love that. We'll keep up with Rucky. Rucky, appreciate that. But that's it for our Seattle sports. Seahawks, the DK diet, kind of what's going on. The Mariners, we're going to get into the regular season finally, barring Minnesota snow. The Storm and the Sonics, funny enough, we get to say that, with some Hall of Fame inductees. The Sounders getting a big win against Minnesota and having an even maybe bigger game with trophies on the line as New York City comes to town. The reigning MLS champs The Kraken was it a 2-2?
Having fun.
Having fun
moving forward.
The Reign getting a win against Portland, and anytime you win against Portland, it's a good thing.
Yes.
And then the Seawolves coming off of their bye week. You get your team captain gets an accolade, and you got a big upcoming week against New England. So, you've got any thoughts on what we've had this past week? Or even looking towards next week?
Just looking towards next week, I think we're probably just going to have just as much to talk about. So more exciting things to come. And before we sign off here, I'm going to beat you to it. We'd like to thank our director, Salman, twice today, double the amount because we forgot last week. So appreciative of everything he does.
It's more so my fault for getting that. So as always, thank your directors. Salman, it's March. Pardon me. It's April. I went back in time. We're first month of April. With that being said, it was pouring rain today. So take care of yourself. Be well this month of April. We'll see you next week. And until then, take care of yourself and do your best to make today a great day.